In the early days of my cohort at Learn, when I was a student, we of course were all asked like, well, why do you want to learn these? And this is kind of an aggregated list of what my cohort came up with. And so I like this list, and I think it's true of to some extent of every cohort I've been a part of since then. And so I just kind of wanted to share them because these are really cool things about becoming a developer and being in tech and being involved with development, is that it's challenging because you will never know everything about development. It just isn't possible. I work with people who've been programming for 25 years and they don't know it all. And they'll definitely be the first person to tell you that they don't know it all, and you won't either. And that's kind of a double-edged sword, because it can feel really overwhelming when you're first learning and you're just like, there's so much out here. How am I ever going to learn this? But when you realize that you just can't ever know it all, it's kind of freeing, and it's kind of amazing, because then you can always learn more. There's always something else out there for you to take a hold of. It's also, I mean, it's constant problem solving, but more importantly, it's really creative problem solving, because there's no right answer when it comes to development. There's an answer that works, and there's better answers than others, but the answer that works is the right answer. It's also the idea of having a practical and a functional and a wanted trade is really neat, because I think that's where a lot of people are struggling with, like, careers where you're doing a job, but it feels really connected to the company you're working for. And if that company or that industry is no longer a thing, what do you do then? And so the idea of learning a skill like web development is that there's so much need for it. There's so many people who are looking for this skill set. And so not only are you very much in demand, but you also can create things and have this tangible outcome. It's a skill that's not limited by industry anymore, which is kind of cool. The ability to create is a huge one. I see so many people that come to code from like an artistic background, because they're the people who just like have these ideas in their head and they just need to like get them out to make them real. And code allows you to do that. It's a very creative trade. It's something that you're allowed to express yourself and see your ideas come to life. And I think that that's really powerful as well. It's fun to see how many artists I have come through to Learn. And one of my favorites, organizational skills. You have to have a very organized mind to be a developer. Your code base and your file structure can be huge. And you're also having to manage a lot of different tasks. And so it's incredibly important to be detail oriented. Spaces matter, matching curly braces matter. And so it's so much attention to detail and having really efficient, organized systems, which I personally love. I also really love the idea of this, that coding is a universal language. And so coding languages themselves often use English words, but everybody across the world uses the same coding languages. And so you can have a team, and often this is a really normal practice for even medium to large size companies, where they'll have teams that live, across the world, so that someone's always working, right? When one group is sleeping, the other people are working. And so if there's issues, somebody is always attentive to that code base. And the idea that like the teams are all working on the same product, they have the same, team that's overseeing them. Their locations are different in order to collaborate to make the same product. And I think that's really cool. So even though you may not speak the same language as your coworkers, like day to day, you're still communicating together through this universal language of development, which I think is pretty cool. And then this was true before the pandemic, but is definitely even more true now. There are opportunities everywhere in the world. And more importantly, like remote opportunities everywhere in the world. There's a lot of people who are moving away from Silicon Valley for the first time because they don't have to live in that expensive place anymore. You can live wherever you have an internet connection, and you can work for a company wherever, which is amazing. I mean, I'm so interested to see what the kind of like the, I don't know what to call it, I guess like the demographics of like big cities. I'm curious how that's going to change over the next couple of years when all of a sudden the tech centers are just a little bit less important, and the work that's being done and the contribution of the employees becomes much more valuable as this like opens up and changes throughout the world. I think the next couple of years are going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Oh, and lastly, it's artistic and it's beautiful, and you can make beautiful things with code. There's a lot of digital art mediums and all of that, but the code itself, the actual code that you're writing, can be really beautiful. Like you'll run across a code snippet, and it will just be like so concise and so perfectly doing exactly what it needs to do. And it's really cool. It's just like the code can be beautiful, and then you make beautiful things with it. So that's my list of whys. But the big one that I think is so important is understanding the technology that we use every day. Because like I said, like, I mean, you all know, like if you need to do something, you're going first to your phone or your computer. I mean, everything we do is you're looking it up on your phone before you travel somewhere. You know, you're checking if the item exists at the grocery store before you go. Like everything is dependent on technology, and so few people understand the things that we are dependent on to function every day. And so I love this quote because a lot of people just like don't know and therefore underappreciate. And so I think it's really cool to see people go through the process of learning and all of a sudden have this giant new respect for like the apps that you use every day. Or all of a sudden you're like, oh, like there's a lot of hate on this one buggy video game, and all of a sudden like I don't care anymore. Like I get it. It's hard. So it's peeking behind the curtain in a really cool way.